GM has just betrayed America. The United States government spent $50 billion to save GM from bankruptcy so that the automaker can provide jobs for Americans. Now, GM is set to invest $1 billion of the bailout money into Mexico in an aim to move production to Mexico and fire all its American staff. This move is a result of the high cost of production that GM says puts a strain on their profits and might cause the collapse of the company unless they find alternatives. The alternative for GM is Mexico. What is the implication of GM's move and who is to blame for it? We will be addressing this soon. The same production cost affects Tesla, but instead of moving jobs to Mexico, Tesla has opted for another route that cuts down production costs and time by as much as 70% without having to move out of the USA. So why isn't GM acting like Tesla? The first set of people that will be affected by GM's move are the EV enthusiasts, but more on this later. GM is to spend $1 billion on its plant in Ramos Arizpe, Coahuila, Mexico. This is because GM is moving its whole EV production to Mexico. This news comes as a shock to many, especially as there is turmoil in the EV market. There are currently EVs having many issues that make them unusable. So people are asking, why will GM further damage trust EVs by producing EVs in Mexico, where there are some trust issues regarding quality? This is the first question on the mind of every observer, but the more important question is, should the United States allow this move? GM has announced plans to amp up its Ramos Arizpe complex, turning it into a powerhouse for electric vehicle production. This means beefing up the assembly and global propulsion systems plants. Once upgraded, Ramos Arizpe will join the ranks of 4 other GM manufacturing facilities churning out electric vehicles. These include spots like Spring Hill, Tennessee, and Factory Zero in Detroit. But that's not all. GM is also rolling out plans to manufacture batteries and electrical components at Ramos Arizpe, starting later this year. We are really proud about contributing to GM's vision of a future with zero crashes, zero emissions, and zero congestion. Through the production of electric vehicles, we are confident that future economic conditions will enable this investment to eventually grow the complex workforce in some operations from 2 to 3 shifts, said Francisco Garza, GM Mexico President and Managing Director, in a statement. With this statement, can you see the looming problem for the USA? This is it. Garza said the Mexico plant will be increasing its shift, which means they will be employing more workers to take on the upcoming production jobs. These jobs to be taken up are not new jobs. They used to be done by Americans but are now being moved to Mexico. Smiling Mexican workers, but it's a slap to the face of American workers, and the United Automobile workers are pissed. They said, "This is a slap in the face for not only UAW members and their families, but also for U.S. taxpayers and the American workforce." Are you aware of the various subsidiaries put in place by President Biden's administration to assist automotive manufacturers financially as they take the EV plunge? If you are subscribed to this channel, you'd know. If you don't know, subscribe to this channel. In order to determine if GM is betraying Americans or not, let's take you down memory lane for a second. You see, back in 2009, the US government swooped in with about $50 billion to rescue GM from the financial crisis. It was a life-changing lifeline for the struggling car giant. In exchange, the government got a 61% ownership slice of GM, along with some preferred shares and a loan. This whole rescue mission wasn't just a handout, though. It was a big job saver, preventing a potential meltdown that could have cost 1.5 million American jobs, says the Center for Automotive Research. But here's the kicker. When the government finally cashed in its GM shares in December, it did not make a profit. Nope, they ended up taking an $11.2 billion loss, even more than the $10.3 billion they thought they'd lose. That loss includes waving goodbye to the last $826 million the government had in the old GM. So, while it was a wild ride, the bailout ended up costing American taxpayers a pretty lump sum. Fast forward to today. President Biden has been all about making sure that laws that grant subsidies and perks to EV manufacturers are passed to make sure that good money goes into American workers' pockets. But here's the twist. Some of the subsidies in place could end up giving a leg up to foreign-made cars sold in the US using federal funds. This screws American workers while still allowing the manufacturers to earn more. Vice President of the United Automobile Workers has this to say: Taxpayer money should not go to companies that utilize labor outside the US while benefiting from American government subsidies. This is not the America any of us signed on for. Frankly, it is unseemly. In essence, GM owes its existence to the USA, but now that the automotive manufacturer is to repay some of its debt by keeping Americans working, it will take a shortcut in hopes to line its pockets with some bucks. This is a well-calculated move on the part of GM, but it sure feels like a betrayal, wouldn't you say? General Motors is committed to creating good-paying U.S. jobs as we transition to an all-electric future, and our recent announcements are proof of that commitment. In fact, we recently announced nearly 9,000 jobs and more than $9 billion in new electric vehicle or battery cell manufacturing facilities in Michigan, Ohio, and Tennessee, said Dan Flores, GM spokesman. Is it true that GM is committed to creating good-paying jobs for Americans? No. This also means that the 9,000 jobs GM announced looks false. The truth of the matter is that GM actually plans to lay off more workers. Get ready for some shakeups at General Motors, GM. They're about to say goodbye to over 1,300 employees in Michigan. Why? Well, GM's pulling the plug on some of their models like the Chevy Bolt and Camaro, which means layoffs at their Orion Assembly Facility in Lake Orion and Lansing Grand River Assembly Stamping Plant in Lansing. The cuts are coming in waves. First, around 911 workers got the news in October, and now an extra 34 folks are feeling the pinch. These layoffs will happen in stages, starting in January. But it's not all doom and gloom. The Orion plant's getting a makeover to focus on electric vehicles, is set to rev up again in 2025. Now GM's saying they might have spots for some of these workers at other local plants. Still, they're looking at slashing about 369 jobs in Lansing. That facility's not just about Camaros, it's also where they make Cadillac sedans, so it's a big deal. GM stock took a hit too, dropping over 1% after the layoff news hit. Just the day before, it had jumped up 6% on the back of news about layoffs at its Cruise unit. So, it's a roller coaster over at GM headquarters. Thanks to Tesla, who have shown resilience in the face of similar adversities, we can see that moving to Mexico is not the solution. Tesla, in its goal to make EVs affordable to the average man, has decided to revolutionize its EV production line by using what is called the GigaPress. What is a GigaPress, and how can it revolutionize the EV production landscape? Tesla is reshaping their production game with a process called die casting. Here's how it works. They melt aluminum scraps and ingots in a super hot oven, reaching 850 degrees C. Once liquid, they sort it to remove any unwanted bits of aluminum oxide, leaving behind a pure liquid metal. The GigaPress is more of a die casting mold. It's like a metal cocoon waiting to bring something beautiful into the world. First, a thin layer of soybean oil gets sprayed inside of the mold as lube for a smooth exit. Then, the mold gets a low vacuum, while the molten metal gets pumped in at a scorching 750 degrees C. The metal poured in with the aid of the vacuum fills every nook and cranny of the mold, creating a perfect replica of what's inside. Once the mold opens up, out pops a red-hot, fully constructed Tesla body, ready to cool off in a quenching tank. And just like that, you've got yourself a piece of precision engineering, all thanks to the magic of die casting. This means that Tesla spends less time bolting together multiple parts, which will result in faster production time and lesser production costs. While Tesla's GigaPress is a piece of great news, it means that Tesla must step up its reliability game if the company really hopes to make EVs affordable. However, it's not just a price reduction that matters. What do we mean? So, if Tesla is not even more reliable than they are now, when the price of a Tesla EV drops, the insurance price will increase. Thank you for watching our video. Like this video, subscribe to our channel, or you will miss important EV updates.